Great. Thank you, Chris. It's truly an honor to be here today for this historic step forward to expand access to a class of medications that can fundamentally change the arc of chronic disease in our country. Of course, these are the incretin or GLP-1 agonist that we've been speaking about. For nearly 150 years, my company, Eli Lilly, has been investing in America. We've been advancing science and creating high-value jobs. But today, are you okay? Gordon, you okay? Yeah. Take a break.
Well, thank you very much, one of the representatives of the...
Okay, so Trump's second term is falling apart faster than anyone predicted, and I am not exaggerating when I say that what just happened inside his administration is one of the most chaotic implosions we have ever seen from any White House in modern American history. And that is really saying something when you consider all the dysfunction we have witnessed over the years. Cabinet members are erupting at each other. Top officials are getting forced out left and right. Resignations are piling up faster than anyone can keep track of them. And at the center of it all is a scandal so embarrassing and so completely preventable that you almost cannot believe it actually happened. Except it did happen. And now Trump's entire national security apparatus is in complete disarray because of one unbelievably careless mistake that never should have occurred in the first place. We are talking about Signalgate, a disaster where Trump's own national security advisor accidentally leaked sensitive military plans about strikes in Yemen by adding a journalist to a group chat where classified information was being discussed openly, like it was no big deal and like security protocols did not even exist. Can you believe this? Like this is the person responsible for keeping America's most sensitive secrets safe and coordinating intelligence for the president, and he accidentally added a reporter to a Signal chat where they were discussing active military operations against targets in Yemen that were supposed to be completely secret. This is not a small mistake that you can brush off and move on from. This is not a minor oversight that happens to everyone sometimes. This is a catastrophic security failure that got Mike Waltz forced out of his position on May 1st, 2025. Making him the first senior official to leave Trump's team as the president was trying to celebrate his first 100 days in office with positive messaging. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us. Be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
One of the representatives of the companies, at one of the companies, got a little bit lightheaded. You saw he went down, and he's fine. They just sent him out. He's got doctor's care, but he's fine. So we had a little bit of an interruption. Sorry for that. And I think we can just begin again with Eli Lilly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Irony here is absolutely incredible when you think about it for even a second, because Trump spent years attacking Hillary Clinton over her emails and her handling of classified information and made it a centerpiece of his political identity. And now his own national security advisor is out the door because he could not figure out how to use a group chat without accidentally inviting a journalist to see secret military plans that were supposed to be protected at the highest levels. You cannot make this stuff up. The jokes write themselves at this point. And the worst part is that this is not an isolated incident or a one-time mistake. This is part of a broader pattern of chaos and incompetence that is consuming Trump's second term and making it impossible for him to govern effectively or maintain any kind of stable team around him, no matter how hard he tries. Mike Waltz was supposed to be one of the serious people in Trump's orbit, a former Green Beret and congressman who was brought in to provide credibility and expertise on national security matters that require careful handling and professional judgment and the kind of attention to detail that keeps Americans safe. Instead, he became the face of one of the most humiliating security failures in recent memory. And Trump had to do something about it, even though he reportedly did not want to fire Waltz outright because that would mean admitting the severity of what happened on his watch. So Trump did what Trump always does when things go wrong. He tried to spin it as something else entirely, announcing that Waltz would become the ambassador to the United Nations instead, a position that requires Senate confirmation and that Waltz may never actually get because senators are going to ask some very uncomfortable questions about how someone who cannot manage a group chat should be trusted to represent America on the world stage. But wait. It gets worse. Because Waltz was not the only one heading for the exit amid this disaster that was consuming the White House. His deputy Alex Wong resigned alongside him, which means the entire top leadership of the National Security Council was wiped out in a single day because of this scandal and the fallout from one careless mistake. Secretary of State Marco Rubio had to step in as acting national security advisor just to keep things functioning, which is not how any of this is supposed to work, and which signals just how desperate the situation had become inside the White House as they scrambled to contain the damage from Signalgate before it got even worse. And here is where it gets really interesting, because critics are saying that the real reason Waltz got pushed out was not just the Signal chat disaster. It was because far-right influencer Laura Loomer had been lobbying Trump to get rid of him for weeks before this happened and was finally getting her way. Loomer apparently thought Waltz was too hawkish on Russia and Iran, and former State Department spokesperson Ned Price said this whole thing was the handiwork of Loomer and her fringe conspiracists who have way too much influence over who gets to work in the Trump White House and make decisions about national security. This follows reports that NSC staff members were fired after a meeting with Loomer about disloyalty, which paints a picture of an administration consumed by paranoia and purges, and the kind of internal chaos that makes effective governance basically impossible. Alright, so let me really dig into what is happening here, because this cabinet implosion is way bigger than just one guy getting fired over a group chat mistake. This is about the fundamental dysfunction at the heart of Trump's second term, and why his administration cannot seem to keep senior officials in their positions for more than a few months before everything falls apart again in spectacular fashion. We need to understand exactly what Signalgate was and why it matters so much, and how it connects to the broader pattern of chaos and turnover that is making it impossible for Trump to build the kind of stable governing team that any president needs to actually accomplish things and manage the massive responsibilities of the executive branch effectively without constant distractions and crises. The Signalgate scandal started when Mike Waltz, Trump's national security advisor, created a group chat on Signal to discuss sensitive military operations, including planned strikes against targets in Yemen that were part of ongoing counterterrorism efforts in the region that required the highest levels of secrecy and operational security. Signal is an encrypted messaging app that government officials sometimes use for secure communications, but it is not approved for discussing classified information at the level they were apparently discussing. And more importantly, you have to be extremely careful about who you add to these chats, because once someone is in, they can see everything that gets posted without any way to take it back. Waltz somehow managed to accidentally add a journalist to this chat, which meant that a reporter was sitting there watching in real time as senior administration officials discussed active military planning that was supposed to be completely secret from the public and from our adversaries who would love to know what we are planning. This is wild because the whole point of having a national security advisor is to be the person who coordinates intelligence and military information for the president and makes sure that sensitive information is handled properly and does not end up in the wrong hands where it could compromise operations or get people killed. Waltz had one job: keep the secrets safe, and he failed at it in the most embarrassing way possible by literally inviting a member of the media to watch classified discussions happen in real time without even realizing what he had done until it was too late. Come on, are you kidding me? This is basic operational security that anyone with a clearance should understand instinctively after their very first day of training, and the guy running the entire National Security Council could not figure out how to check who was in a group chat before posting classified military plans for everyone to see. The immediate fallout was predictable. Waltz was forced out on May 1st, 2025, just as Trump was trying to mark his first 100 days in office with positive messaging about his accomplishments and his agenda and everything he had achieved since taking office again. Instead of celebrating wins and talking about the future, Trump had to deal with questions about how his national security advisor could be so careless with classified information and what this says about the competence of the people he has surrounded himself with during his second term. Trump tried to soften the blow by announcing that Waltz would be nominated to become UN ambassador, which is technically a promotion on paper. But everyone knows this was really about getting Waltz out of a position where he could cause more damage while trying to save face and avoid admitting that a massive security failure had occurred on Trump's watch that made the whole administration look incompetent. But here is the thing, that UN ambassador nomination requires Senate confirmation, and there is no guarantee that Waltz is going to get confirmed when senators start asking questions about Signalgate and whether someone who made this kind of mistake should be trusted to represent the United States on the world stage where the stakes are even higher. Republican senators are going to have to decide whether they want to go on record defending someone who accidentally leaked classified military plans to a journalist, and some of them may decide that is not a vote they want to take heading into 2026. 2026 when they have to face voters who might have questions about why they supported putting someone like that in such an important position representing our country. The resignation of Deputy Alex Wong alongside Waltz made things even worse because it meant the entire senior leadership of the National Security Council was gone in a single day, leaving a massive void at the top of one of the most important institutions in the national security apparatus that is supposed to protect Americans from threats around the world. Secretary of State Marco Rubio stepping in as acting national security advisor was an emergency measure to keep things functioning. But it also means Rubio is now doing two jobs at once during a period when there are serious foreign policy challenges that require focused attention from people who are not stretched thin trying to cover for colleagues who just got forced out in disgrace. What makes this situation even more troubling is the role that far-right influencer Laura Loomer apparently played in pushing Waltz out before Signalgate even happened and created the opening for his removal. According to critics and former officials, Loomer had been lobbying Trump for weeks to get rid of Waltz because she thought he was too hawkish on Russia and Iran, meaning he was not sufficiently aligned with the more isolationist and pro-Russia faction that has gained influence in Trump's orbit and wants to reshape American foreign policy. Former State Department spokesperson Ned Price said the whole situation was the handiwork of Loomer and her fringe conspiracists, suggesting that a social media influencer with extreme views has more influence over national security personnel decisions than the professionals who actually understand these issues and their implications for American security and safety. This connects to earlier reports that NSC staff members were fired after a meeting where Loomer raised concerns about disloyalty, which paints a disturbing picture of an administration where paranoia about loyalty has become more important than competence or qualifications when it comes to deciding who gets to serve in sensitive positions that affect national security. If people are getting fired because a social media influencer thinks they are not loyal enough, rather than because of their actual job performance or expertise, that tells you everything about the dysfunction at the heart of this White House and why things keep falling apart so dramatically every few weeks. The broader pattern here is unmistakable when you look at everything that has happened during Trump's second term so far and how it all connects together into a picture of chaos. The mass federal firings through DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, led by Elon Musk, have pushed out thousands of career government workers who were labeled as disloyal simply because they worked during previous administrations or expressed concerns about certain policies that they thought were problematic. Many of these workers resigned in protest rather than accept deferred resignation offers that would have kept them in limbo for months, and the result has been a hollowing out of institutional expertise across the federal government that makes it harder to actually accomplish anything or avoid the kind of mistakes we saw with Signalgate. At the Justice Department, the turnover has been so dramatic that people are comparing it to the Saturday Night Massacre during Watergate, with senior officials resigning rather than participate in what they see as politically motivated investigations and retribution against Trump's critics who dared to speak out against him. The administration has launched probes against figures like John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor from his first term who became a critic, which sends a clear message to anyone in government that crossing Trump will have consequences and that the Justice Department will be used as a weapon against perceived enemies. All of this creates an environment where talented people do not want to serve, where those who do serve are constantly looking over their shoulders wondering if they will be next, and where the people who remain are often those who are willing to tell Trump what he wants to hear rather than what he needs to hear to make good decisions. That is a recipe for exactly the kind of disasters we are seeing with Signalgate, where someone who should never have been in a position of such responsibility ended up there anyway and proceeded to make mistakes that a more competent and confident team would have prevented before they ever happened. The national security implications of all this chaos are serious and should concern everyone regardless of their political views or who they voted for in the last election. The United States faces real threats and real challenges around the world, from the situation in Ukraine to tensions with Iran to counterterrorism operations like the Yemen strikes that were compromised by Signalgate. Handling these challenges effectively requires stable leadership and institutional competence and the ability to keep secrets, all of which are undermined when the administration is consumed by internal chaos and purges and the constant turnover of senior officials who cannot survive more than a few months before getting pushed out for one reason or another. Okay, so let us break this down into the key points you need to understand, because this cabinet implosion story is massive, and it reveals deep problems with how Trump's second term is being run that are going to have consequences for months and years to come as the chaos continues to spread and affect everything the administration tries to do. Point number 1, National Security Advisor. Mike Waltz was forced out on May 1, 2025 after the Signalgate scandal, where he accidentally added a journalist to a Signal group chat that was being used to discuss classified military operations, including planned strikes in Yemen, that were supposed to be secret from everyone outside the government. This is one of the most embarrassing national security failures in recent memory. The person responsible for coordinating America's most sensitive intelligence and military information literally invited a reporter to watch classified discussions happen in real time because he could not manage a group chat properly and did not check who was in it before posting sensitive information. Trump tried to save face by announcing Waltz would be nominated as UN ambassador, but that requires Senate confirmation, and there is no guarantee he will get it when senators start asking uncomfortable questions about how someone who made this kind of mistake should be trusted with any important position. Point number 2. Waltz was not alone in leaving because his deputy Alex Wong resigned at the same time, meaning the entire senior leadership of the National Security Council was wiped out in a single day and had to be replaced on an emergency basis before things fell apart completely. Secretary of State Marco Rubio stepped in as acting national security advisor just to keep things functioning, which means one person is now trying to do 2 critical jobs during a period of serious foreign policy challenges around the world that require focused attention. This kind of chaos at the top of the national security apparatus is dangerous because it creates gaps and confusion and makes it harder to respond effectively to threats and opportunities that require focused attention from experienced leaders who know what they are doing. Point number 3. Critics say the real reason Waltz got pushed out was not just Signalgate but pressure from far-right influencer Laura Loomer, who had been lobbying Trump for weeks to get rid of him because she thought he was too hawkish on Russia and Iran and not aligned with her preferred foreign policy approach. Former State Department spokesperson Ned Price called this the handiwork of Loomer and her fringe conspiracists, suggesting that a social media personality with extreme views has significant influence over who gets to serve in sensitive national security positions in the Trump White House that affect the safety of every American. This follows reports that NSC staff were fired after a meeting with Loomer about disloyalty, painting a picture of an administration where paranoia and ideological purity tests matter more than competence or qualifications. Point number 4. This cabinet implosion connects to the broader pattern of chaos consuming Trump's second term, including the mass federal firings through DOJ, where thousands of career workers were pushed out or resigned in protest, rather than accept offers that would keep them in limbo, and the Justice Department turnover that critics are comparing to the Saturday Night Massacre during Watergate, when Nixon tried to shut down investigations into his own conduct. The administration has launched retribution probes against figures like John Bolton, who criticized Trump publicly, sending a message that disloyalty will be punished severely, and creating an environment where talented people do not want to serve, and those who remain are afraid to tell Trump anything he does not want to hear. This dysfunction makes failures like Signalgate more likely because the people who might have prevented such mistakes are either gone or too scared to speak up. Point number 5. The political implications of this cabinet implosion are significant heading into the 2026 midterms, when Republicans will need to defend their support for an administration that cannot keep senior officials in their positions or prevent embarrassing security failures that make headlines around the world. Every resignation and every scandal gives Democrats ammunition to attack Republican candidates as enablers of chaos and incompetence, and forces those candidates into uncomfortable positions where they have to either defend the indefensible or distance themselves from Trump in ways that might anger base voters who remain loyal to him. The constant turnover and dysfunction make it harder for Republicans to run on a message of competent governance, when the evidence suggests the opposite is true. So, what happens next, and where does this story go from here, as Trump tries to stabilize his administration amid ongoing chaos and turnover that shows no signs of stopping anytime soon, no matter what he does to try to get things under control? The immediate question is whether Waltz will actually get confirmed as UN ambassador, or whether senators will use the confirmation process to extract more information about Signalgate and potentially block his nomination entirely if they decide he is too damaged. If Waltz cannot get confirmed, that makes Trump look even weaker and raises questions about his judgment in trying to give a promotion to someone who just caused a major security failure that embarrassed the entire administration. The broader question is whether Trump can stop the bleeding and build a stable team that can actually govern effectively, or whether the paranoia and purges and ideological purity tests will continue driving out competent people and replacing them with loyalists who may not have the skills or experience needed to do these incredibly difficult jobs without making catastrophic mistakes. The pattern from Trump's first term was constant turnover and chaos, and his second term appears to be following the same trajectory, but even faster and more dramatically than before, with consequences that are more severe. For national security, this matters because the threats facing America do not pause while the White House sorts out its internal dysfunction and figures out who is going to fill all these empty positions. The situation in Ukraine requires careful management and strategic thinking from experienced professionals. Tensions with Iran could escalate at any moment without warning. Counterterrorism operations like those in Yemen depend on keeping secrets and maintaining competent leadership at the NSC. When the people responsible for handling these challenges keep getting fired or resigning, it creates dangerous gaps that adversaries can exploit and that make Americans less safe. For the Republican Party, this cabinet implosion is another headache they did not need as they try to maintain their majorities heading into competitive elections that will determine control of Congress. The chaos makes it harder to recruit quality candidates who want to be associated with this administration. It makes it harder to raise money from donors who want to support winners. And it makes it harder to convince swing voters that Republicans deserve their trust when every week brings another story about dysfunction and incompetence at the highest levels. For voters, this matters because the stability of the executive branch affects everything from the economy to foreign policy to the basic functioning of government services that people depend on every day for their lives and livelihoods. A president who cannot maintain a stable cabinet, who drives away competent people through paranoia and purges, is a president who cannot effectively manage the massive responsibilities of the office. That should concern everyone regardless of party because we all have an interest in competent governance even when we disagree about specific policies. Trump's administration is imploding because of the same dynamics that caused chaos during his first term: the inability to maintain stable relationships with professionals, the paranoia about loyalty that sees enemies everywhere, the willingness to let fringe figures influence personnel decisions, and the constant cycle of hiring people and then pushing them out when they inevitably disappoint or displease him. Signalgate was a symptom of this dysfunction, not the cause, and there will be more scandals and more resignations as long as these underlying dynamics remain unchanged. The walls keep closing in from every direction. I will see you in the next one.